Hello everybody, it's Mike. Alright, so I thought I would make a video really explaining the 12 steps as I understand them. So this channel, however you get here, we are just going to be focusing on the 12 steps. I have been working the 12 steps or been in 12-step groups for 39 years. So I have personal experience. This video is me sharing my personal experience. I am not representing any 12-step group. I am not representing myself as the authority of the 12 steps. But I am sharing with you my experience. You do with it what you choose. And I'm doing so because on this channel, I recommend, in order for people to recover from relationships where they've endured toxic abuse, I strongly recommend that people work the 12 steps. And I don't care which 12-step group you go to. I recommend CODA because it's codependence. So that'll work for anything having to do with this. But having said that, let me be clear about what this channel is about. I'm somebody who survived an extremely toxic relationship with somebody who, a tremendously wonderful, beautiful person. Very smart, very sensitive, very spiritual, very intellectually keen, very communicative, very, very loving, very kind, very artistic, really wonderful person all the way around, except for the fact that she suffered from untreated, undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. And that particular disorder has all kinds of issues and problems, but it really explosively comes out in intimate romantic relationships. And so that was extremely toxic and destructive to me personally, and I had to do a lot of work to recover from that relationship. And that's what I'm here to share with people what I did. I am not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I am not even a mental health professional, I'm not even a licensed counselor. I do not have any cluster B personality disorders. I don't have borderline personality disorder. I have all kinds of other things, but I don't have those things. And so I'm going to be sharing with you about the 12 steps because I talk about them all the time. I tell people, there are 4 things that I tell people they have to do in order to recover from being in a toxic relationship with somebody who suffers from a cluster B personality disorder. And I tell you those 4 things, and one of those things and I even say if I had to pick, if I only had to do one of these 4 things, if I had to pick one, I would pick working the 12 steps. And that's because it accomplishes something nothing else can. This isn't me reading from a book. This isn't me sharing what psychologists or psychiatrists, because the truth of the matter is psychologists and psychiatrists are kind of poking in from the outside, because the only way you're going to understand the 12 steps is if you're somebody who needs them and works them. Otherwise, you won't know what they are. You can talk about them and maybe muse about them, but you'll never understand what it is. And so I'm talking from that perspective. And the most important thing that you need to know is that I have completely healed from the relationship, from the toxic relationship that was so damaging to me. Now, as you can hear, I didn't say I'm completely healed from codependence or anything else. I will still deal with whatever my neuroses are for the rest of my life, although I am very happy, and the 12 steps do help me to enjoy my life more. That's really all I'm promising anybody. The only thing that I can promise you is that if you do the 4 things I tell you to do, and if you do them with everything you have to the best of your ability, what I can guarantee that you will do is you will completely heal from the toxic relationship that you are suffering from. Cluster B personality disorder relationships are in a class all by themselves. We're not talking about your average dysfunctional codependent home. We're not talking about even some of the very toxic situations like living in a alcoholic family or having alcoholic parents. Now, those people can create cluster B personality children. They may or may not have cluster B themselves. But we're not even talking about just your average run-of-the-mill lack of love or attention or shaming or guilt or codependence or even, alcoholic parents. We're not talking about that. When you've been in a romantic relationship and also other kinds of relationships with somebody who suffers from cluster B personality disorders, there is a whole level of pain and dysfunction and cognitive dissonance and insanity and really destructive things that come out of that I'm speaking for myself, I haven't seen. And I thought I'd seen it all, and I haven't seen anything like this. So I came on here to create this channel to save my sanity. I was losing my sanity as a result of the relationship. So people will go to, what I tell people to do is to go to coda.org, and I tell them to go to meetings. You can do them online meetings. You don't even have to get in your car and drive. And I tell people to, when they get to the meeting, to raise their little hand and get a sponsor. Work the steps with a sponsor. And then when you've done that, when you've done all 12 of the steps with a sponsor, then make yourself available to work the steps with somebody else. If you haven't done that, you haven't worked the steps. If you haven't done that, you don't know what the steps are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the 12 steps. As I said, I've been doing them for 39 years. And I've come to some understandings about them, which the average person, when they read them, and a lot of people, understandably, myself included, if I were to walk into this, right now, I would look at it and I'd go, what is all this religious garbage? What is this crap? I don't want to, what are you doing? So I understand when people say, I'm not into that religion crap. I'm not either. In fact, I've written books exposing not only the false history of organized monotheist Abrahamic religion, but I go on my other channel, I rant on and on talking about how Jehovah, the God of the Bible, is actually the narcissistic, he's actually a narcissist. He suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. And his son Jesus is actually somebody who suffers from inverted narcissism. He's a codependent of the worst type. So I'm not a religious person, but I'm here. I'm going to explain to you my understanding based on my experience, my opinion of what the 12 steps are, so that you won't be worried about them. So first, let's talk about 12-step groups in general. I had somebody come on here and I reacted very strongly to them because what they said was potentially very destructive to other people. Now, they were talking out of their ignorance. They didn't know any better. They didn't mean anything by it, but the level of misinformation that they had was potentially very destructive. And this person said, I was in a CODA group, and it was a cult, and they took all my money. And I said, what? That's not CODA. There's no 12-step group on the planet that will take your money. They don't want your money. If you go to a meeting, they might pass around the bowl, and you might, if you want to, you can throw $1 in, but that's going to pay for the rent of the building, or it's going to pay for the coffee, or it's going to pay for the literature. Nobody makes any money. There is no centralized anything. In fact, none of the 12 steps groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Codependence Anonymous, Sex Anonymous. I mean, there's, Marijuana Anonymous. There's no shortage. Al-Anon. There's no shortage of 12-step groups out there. In fact, if you want to, you can create a 12-step group right now, and it won't have any connection to any other 12-step group. There is no centralized authority. There's no leader. There's no prophet. There's nothing. I don't know about the other ones. Some of them, like Alcoholics Anonymous, has a central office where they just deal with literature and, the books that, those guys wrote. And each 12-step program has its own literature. So there's no person or group of people running anything. When you walk in there, nobody's going to take your name and phone number unless you want to give it to them, unless maybe there's some COVID restrictions or something like that. But nobody gives a crap about you. Nobody's monitoring you, and there's no religious. In fact, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to work the steps. There's nothing required of you. So people who say things like that, it's a cult, they've never been there. They may sit in a meeting and they may have a judgment to it and say it's very religious or it's very this. There might, there are things about people can respond very negatively, but my experience is that that's their judgment based on either their ignorance and or their projection. They project onto it things that aren't there. And other people go to meetings and they complain about, I went to a meeting and God, everybody just complains all the time and there's just all this victim mentality and the whining. And I say, of course, they're sick. That's like walking into a hospital and saying, oh, the doctor told me I had to go to the hospital, but when I walked in, there was all these sick people. I don't want to be, well, that's what a hospital is. It's a place where sick people go to get well. 12-step groups are the same thing. You walk into them, you're going to be filled with a bunch of people that are sick and messed up, and they're going to be, on whatever scale of craziness. That's why they're there. Get over it. The point of the meetings is to identify with others, but that's not going to heal you. What's going to heal you is to work the steps. You identify with others so that you can learn from them, so that you can then work the steps. When I go to meetings and there are crazy people in the meetings and I listen to them, I can't believe the crap that's coming out of this person's face. I say to myself, okay, what is he or she doing that I relate to? And then if I can identify that in myself, I will. But if not, I go, well, I don't want what that person has. So let me listen to hear what they're doing so I can do something different. And what you'll find is they're not working the steps. People work the steps. There's something that happens to them. So before I get into it, I'm going to list all of them. I'm going to walk through each one of them, and I'm going to demystify it. Remember, these were written almost 100 years ago. Almost 100 years ago. So 100 years ago, the language and the mindset was very different than it is now. If the 12 steps were to be invented today, the things that people would write would be very different. They wouldn't even use the word God. They would come up with some new agey sort of thing about, a cosmic energy or something, the creative cosmic energy. They'd come up with something that people nowadays want to listen to. 100 years ago, you had two choices. You had God or atheism. That was it. So they picked that word. So get over that word. It's not what you think it means. So let's talk about that. The 12 steps originate from Bill and Bob. These were two alcoholics during the Depression in the United States. And I'm going to say this is my opinion. My opinion is I don't think anybody else would have come up with the 12 steps. I think the only people who could have come up with the 12 steps would have been alcoholics. Every other 12-step group has benefited from them, but that particular mental disease, illness, whatever word you want to call it, I don't even know what alcoholism is considered psychologically. They're the only people that would have come up with that. And the reason for that is because their life was on the line. The vast majority of the 12-step groups, those people's lives may be on the line. In other words, those 12 steps may save their lives. But it's not going to save their life unless we're talking about alcoholics or drug addicts. It's not going to save their life within the next 24 hours. Whereas these people who came up with this 12-step program, the first guys, the alcoholics, they literally were looking at, either I'll wake up dead tomorrow, or I've got to figure out something. I've got to do something. And they were willing to do absolutely whatever the hell it took because they didn't want to die. They knew that they couldn't control their addiction to alcohol and it was going to kill them. Bill W. There was a movie, a TV movie a long time ago about him, and it was really phenomenal. And there, in one point, what they used to do with alcoholics way back in the day is that after they got to a certain point, they would just lock you up. There was nothing. They didn't know what to do with them. They would lock you up. They'd put you in a straitjacket and they'd stick you in a cell, a padded cell. You'd go to the loony bin. And what would happen is then these alcoholics would then go through withdrawals, and being locked up, they'd go crazy. They'd go completely bonkers loony. And Bill W.'s wife was there, and she was looking, what to do. And she went into one of these loony bins that was supposed to be a place for alcoholics to heal. And she walks by one room and there's a guy in a straitjacket and he's screaming like he's in pain. It sounds like he's being tortured and he's screaming in pain. And she's shocked at what she's seeing because she's thinking she's going to going to put her husband in one of these places. And she's walking by and she's looking at this and she's shocked. And the doctor says, "Oh, he's not in pain. He just thinks he is." That's what these people were trying to prevent happening to them. So these guys were either going to end up in a loony bin in a straitjacket, going crazy, being shocked, or, who knows, experimented on, or who knows, whatever else, or they were going to end up dead on the street. That's where alcoholics ended up. So they came up with this incredibly challenging way to, desperate attempt to heal, and it worked. So I don't think any other people would have come up with that. I don't think drug addicts would have come up with that. I don't think, certainly Al-Anons and codependents and gamblers, none of these people would have been forced to that extreme to come up with something that was so psychologically revolutionary. Because for an alcoholic back then to recover, they had to go through a complete psychological shift or they would die. So, people on this channel, I'm talking about recovery from codependence to, a borderline or a narcissist. You don't have that same pressure on you. So, when I tell you, you've got to do these 4 things to heal from the relationship, then you're going to be like many people who have said, well, there's nothing wrong with it, but come on, Mike, there's plenty of other ways to recover. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I haven't seen it. My experience, now this is my experience in therapy and in group therapy. My experience is that the small minority of people who I've seen in group therapy who work the 12 steps, they heal very quickly. They progress very quickly. They become conscious very quickly, and they move through issues much more quickly than the people who don't go through the 12 steps. There are people that I've known for decades, 20 years plus, who don't have to work the 12 steps. And they have all kinds of neuroses and problems and come from dysfunctional families and a lot of pain and painful relationships and codependent this and all that. And the progression is very slow, and some of them haven't made any progress. So therapy can only go so far. But when you combine therapy with the 12 steps, you have an extremely potent mixture that allows you to go deep into the unconscious mind and reprogram neurally reprogram the brain. Now the question is, who are the 12 steps for? I'm going to give my opinion, which is not based on any scientific fact. It's just an observation and a feeling. My feeling is that the 12 steps are helpful for cluster Bs, but they're not going to have the same transformative healing effect that it will for the codependents. What I've seen with, what I'm just now learning about borderlines is DBT seems to be a pretty good therapeutic avenue. I look at it, it's very milquetoast. It's incredibly simple for me to look at. Doesn't mean that some of the things that they're required to do aren't challenging for them, but it's incredibly simple. It's not that deep, it's not that profound. The 12 steps are incredibly profound. The most profound psychological transformative tool I've ever come across. Now, psychologists and psychiatrists don't farm that out. They, a lot of people will tell people they should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Court systems will tell you to go to Alcoholics Anonymous if you're an alcoholic or if you got a drinking problem or whatever. But it doesn't mean that they understand it or they endorse it. I heard somebody who claims to be a healthcare, mental health care professional on YouTube. I heard this person, this was probably the most destructive, unprofessional thing I've ever heard anybody in that field say. And this person said, I don't have the exact quote, but this person said, the 12 steps aren't going to help you if you're a codependent. I couldn't believe it. It was easily one of the most unprofessional, destructive things I've ever seen anybody who claims to be a mental health professional ever do. So I would never, something's broken. Something's not right there. But in any case, I'm getting off topic here. All right, so I'll give you some background on it. Let's now go through the 12 steps and explain them to you. Please hold off your questions until later. I really just want to make this about the 12 steps. And if there's other stuff, maybe we'll talk about it. But let me bring up the 12 steps for you. This is taken from the website of CODA, CODA.org. 12 Steps of Codependence Anonymous. It's virtually identical to every other 12-step group because it's been taken, as you see from the bottom, reprinted and adapted from Alcoholics Anonymous. But they're not connected. Alcoholics Anonymous is not the father of CODA. CODA is completely independent, but they've chosen to work those same 12 steps. So this is what happens when you come onto the, I don't know if this is on the website or not, but you see that here and you're going to read this. And if I've said to you, you need to work the 12 steps if you want to recover from your relationship with your borderline, you're going to read this and you're going to think that, okay, by reading this, I'm going to be able to work these, and you think you're going to figure it out on your own, and you're wrong. But let's read them. So the first one is, we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other codependents and to practice these principles in all our affairs. All right? So those are the 12 steps. At first glance, it sounds like a religious program. As me reading it now, because I'm reading it now, not having, heard it over for, 39 years in meetings. I'm reading it now as though I'm coming to it for the first time. And like you, I would be like, oh my God, this is just such religious. But let me break it down for you so you understand what it really means. First step, we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. In the original literature in the Alcoholics Anonymous book, it then says, there's a phrase where it says, we found we could not manage our own lives. That's different. That's a subtle shift. Whether Bill W. did that on purpose, I don't know. But it was a brilliant, subtle shift, because the first step says, we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. I'm sure he didn't realize it, but he is tapping into people's dissociation with their issue. And you're not the one that has the problem. It's your life that you're powerless over. That our lives had become unmanageable. Your life is this other thing. It's not you. You didn't create it. It's this thing that happened to you, and it's now become unmanageable. And it's brilliant because people come into this, whether you're a codependent, whatever your issue is, you come into it feeling it's being done to you. The borderline is doing it to you. The narcissist is doing it to you. You don't understand. I stepped in a bear trap. You don't get it. I was just walking down the street and this magical evil genius came and hypnotized me, and I couldn't, and trust me, you would have been hypnotized too. So you come into it blaming everything and everybody else. And you're completely clueless to the fact that everything going on in your life has been your own making. I tell you that, but at first you don't want to hear that. You want me to link arms with you and spend all of our time talking about how evil and horrible the borderline or the narcissist was, etc., etc. So the first step, you can accept that, yes, I'm powerless. They've done it to me, and I can't do anything now. I'm held captive. I've been damaged by this other person. And then the brilliant part is that later you find out that that it's not that your life had become unmanageable. It's that you no longer have the power to manage your own life. So since you have been the one, because you've been taught as a good codependent, you've been taught it's not only your job to completely control your life, it's your job to control everybody else's life. And if you don't fix everybody else's problems, then you're going to be blamed for it. So you have this grandiosity in your humility about being able to control yourself and control everybody else. So the whole idea of surrendering to something other than you is absolutely abominable. But that's the first gate. You have to get past that. We admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives have become unmanageable. Those are seemingly two separate thoughts, but they're linked. We realized we were powerless over the borderline. You're powerless. That's a lot of you really, if you get here, you don't believe that. I didn't believe it. You believe that you have the power to change them. You have the power to fix them. You have the power to make them feel loved. That's your job. If you can finally just get through to their resistance and be the magical healing angel super being, the super empath, if you can finally be the super empath and flood them with your perfect, divine, unyielding, infinite love, they will succumb and they will surrender and allow the love to come in, and then they will be healed, and then the angelic choirs will sing and you will rise above and you will become God. If you don't relate to everything I just said, then you're in denial, because that's exactly if you're with a borderline, that's exactly what's been going on. Maybe you would use different words, but the feeling is the same. So now you have to realize the one thing that has been driving your whole life and your whole relationship, which is that you are powerless over them. Your love is squat. Your love means dog shit. You will not be able to do anything to them with your love because they're borderline, they're a narcissist. And then the second part is then you come to realize that our lives have become unmanageable. The second word is admitted. We admitted. Here's the other part. The first word is we. It's not I admitted, it's we admitted. Every single week, somebody leaves a comment saying something to the effect on my channel, not necessarily on the live, but on the comment section. Somebody at least once a week leaves a comment saying that, oh my God, your story is exactly like mine. You and I, we should get together. We should, can I have your email? Because you and I are exactly the same, because you think you're all by yourself. You think your experience is unique. You think I'm the only other person that happens to have the exact experience you did. Oh my God, you and I need to get together. No, there's billions, maybe not billions, thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of people, certainly, who have this same experience, who could benefit from admitting that they are powerless. You can't do a damn thing. Not a damn thing you can do for borderline. And the result of that complete inability to accomplish anything shows your utter powerlessness, and that you can't even manage your own life. You can't even manage your own emotions. You can't even, though you who try so hard to control all of your feelings as well as control the borderline with your love, you don't realize you're using your love as a weapon to control them. You've taken them hostage. You're going to control them with your love, and you're going to get them to be healed and to love you. And you have to admit that that's all pure nonsense. It's pure grandiosity. It is your narcissism. Let me be clear about this. You are narcissistic. You are toxically narcissistic. You are not a narcissist. Narcissistic personality disorder is something else. If you're just a codependent, you're not cluster B, you're not a narcissist. But you are narcissistic, and you are toxically narcissistic, or you wouldn't be here. So this is step one. Step one is you admit that you are powerless over the borderline. You cannot heal them, that your life has become unmanageable. Now, your life has become unmanageable because you can't manage it. So the deeper part of that is you realize that you cannot manage your own life. Bear in mind that your life is nothing more than the external projection of your internal reality. So it doesn't matter if I say you can't control your emotions, you can't control your life. You can't manage your emotions, you can't manage your life. It's the same thing. You can't separate your external life from your internal life. If your external life, people in your life are harmful, toxic, crazy, you don't have any money, you don't have any health, you don't have any choices, you don't have any spare time, that's you. You did that, nobody did that, you did that. If you can't manage your external life, it means you're not able to manage your internal life. And that's what this first step is saying here. You admitted that you're powerless over others, that you cannot manage your internal reality. Number two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. Notice it doesn't say you, greater than yourself. It says ourselves. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This is something you do with others. I keep telling people you can't do it alone. Stop trying. It won't work. Brain surgeons cannot do brain surgery on themselves. You need others. And as I said, once you get into these meetings, you're going to find out not only are you not unique, and not only you thought I was unique, you came onto my channel and said that, no, I'm just like that Mike guy. He really no, I don't understand you at all. You're one of tens of hundreds of thousands of people that have the exact same issue that I have. When you can get to that place, you realize it's a we thing and not an I thing or a you thing. So came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That, again, is a brilliant way of realizing you're nuts, you're bonkers, you're insane, you're loopy. You don't have a personality disorder. You don't have a mental illness. But you are not sane. How do I know that? Because you stayed with somebody who damaged you over and over again, who violated your trust, who betrayed you, who devalued you in ways that no other human you've ever experienced could have, and you kept going back for more. Not only did you keep going back for more, you went back for more with the delusion that this time it's going to get better, and this time you're going to do it right and they're going to love you. You are not sane, my friend. And again, the brilliance of it is that Bill W. introduces this idea in a very ingenious way. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That's a very, very powerful way of him saying, you have to admit you're nuts. You're bonkers. You're loony. You don't have the first clue what reality is. People aren't going to respond to that. But he leads you into that. Power greater than yourself. He also says you're going to need a spiritual power. That second step, but he doesn't do that. He just says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. When you're doing it with other people, you're in a war. This is your fellow warriors, and you guys are coming back from the front, and together we're going to heal ourselves. There's no judgment. There's no judgment whatsoever. It creates camaraderie and healing just in the way that he says it. It's a brilliant way to bypass the defenses. But since you can't control others, and since your life is unmanageable, you don't even have the power to manage your own internal emotional reality, then you don't need to admit this time. You choose to believe that there is some power that is not you that can bring you back to sanity. It means that you're right. There was a point somewhere where you had some sanity and you've lost it. We can restore you together. We can restore ourselves to sanity, but we need some power to what? Control what's going on, because you realize you can't control your life. You can't control others. There must be something. Because if there isn't, let me tell you this, if there isn't, you're screwed. Because if there isn't, and you're the only one that can think yourself back into sanity, just, cash in your chips now. It's over. You're screwed. So it means that before we even get into the whole God thing, bear in mind this was written almost 100 years ago. And as I said, 100 years ago in the Midwest in the United States, during the Depression, you didn't have Wicca and yoga, and you didn't have all this stuff. You didn't have this smorgasbord of different spiritual things you could pick and choose from. You had two choices. This is the United States. You could either be Christian or Jewish, or some other form within that. You had to be an Abrahamic monotheist. That was it. That's all you had available. There was nothing else. Don't even bother trying. In fact, that's why the Western world has so many atheists. Because atheism, people who are atheists are actually unconscious monotheists. Because, for instance, there's a tribe that I'm really enjoying learning about. There's only 4,000 of them left in the world, in Tanzania. And they still live exactly the way the first humans lived 100,000 years ago. I kid you not. They're hunter-gatherers. They're aware of the outside world. They're bilingual. They speak Swahili and their own language, which is a complete isolate. There's only 4,000 speakers in the whole world. that speak this one language. I'm certain that these people are directly descended from the very first modern humans. I'm absolutely certain of that. And I forgot why I brought those guys up, but those guys don't have a religion. It's so refreshing. They don't have a religion. They just love living. They wake up every day and they hunt and gather, and they just do that because they love doing it. They could go and live in the normal world. They don't want to do that. They love what they're doing. It makes them happy. And they don't have a religion. They believe in the sun and the moon and the stars and the ancestors, and that's it. When somebody dies, they put their body in a cave and they hope that their body will go to the sun. That's the limit of their religion. It's exactly what the first, even pre-humans did. They put the bodies in a cave. So you don't have to believe in Jehovah. Atheists who say there is no God, what they really say is, I can only conceptualize of this Jehovah God, and I don't like Jehovah, therefore Jehovah doesn't exist. So they're unconscious monotheists. This, what we're talking about here in the 12 steps is a power greater than yourself. We talk about those people, I think they're called the Hadza, I forget their name. Their belief is that we come from the sun, and if you're lucky, you'll go back to the sun. They don't even. The guy says, when people die, we just put their body in a cave and then we move on. We forget about it. In other words, it's none of our problem. It's none of our business. We don't know what the hell. We just put their body in a cave and the sun will pick it up, or who knows what'll happen. They'll go back to the sun. We don't know. They don't know and they don't care. It's like we don't care. We're here to just hunt and gather and have a good time and live in nature, and that's all we're here to do. It's an amazing life. I'm so envious of that life. So you don't have to believe in God. The word God is not synonymous with Jehovah. The word God is not synonymous with some being that has a plan for your life and is going to map out your, people ask for God's will. I mean, it's even mentioned here in the steps, but it's a complete misunderstanding of the potential. I mean, if you want to believe that, that's fine with me. You can believe that. You can believe in Jehovah. I don't care. It'll work. People can stay, recovered, believing in whatever power greater than you, as long as it's not you. You want to believe in the sun. You want to believe in the moon. You want to believe in the power of love. You want to believe in good orderly direction. You want to believe in the electromagnetic. If I were struggling with this, I would choose the electromagnetic field. It's because the electromagnetic field is what prevents my hands from passing through each other. Because in my hand, there is more space than there is liquid or physical matter. When you break down and you get down to the macro level, there's huge amounts of space. It's like the universe. The planets and the stars and the galaxies are separated by huge, unimaginable amounts of space. Same is true with you. You're mostly empty space. The electromagnetic field is what creates the barrier between different objects. The electromagnetic field is, I don't know what the exact is, it's 10 to the 32nd power, unbelievably stronger than gravity. If it weren't for the electromagnetic field, the gravity in the sun would force it to collapse in on itself, and it would burn itself out much more quickly. So if I had to pick one, I'm okay where I'm at with what I believe. But if I was struggling with it and I had to pick something that was greater than me, I would pick the electromagnetic field. It's good for codependence because it's the law of boundaries. So the power of boundaries, make that your God. So get over your grandiose narcissism about I'm not going to believe in that Jehovah, I'm not going to believe in that. Yeah, get over that. It's not serving you. You can't manage your own life. You're not capable of managing your internal or external reality. So if you're going to need some kind of power and it ain't you, then it's got to be something else. Pick whatever you want. A supermodel's ass or boobs. I seriously don't care. I mean, does that have, for some guys, that has more power than anything. That woman's body has more power over me than anything else in the universe. That's my new God. I don't care. It doesn't matter. There's no judgment. Judgment is our own grandiosity, our own narcissism. There is no judgment. The universe doesn't care. Again, thinking about those, I'm really, really obsessed with these hunter-gatherers. If you were to watch them, you would think, oh my God, they're so horrifically cruel to these animals that they're killing. And for them, it's like, no, this is what we're here to do. We're here to hunt and gather. That's what we do. And they chase after all these different animals and they, butcher them and kill them. I mean, one guy had a deer, a baby deer, because that's all he could catch. And after biting on his ear to get him to cry to get his mother to come so they could kill the mother giant deer, whatever the hell it was, after they realized that wasn't going to happen, he literally bit down on the throat of the thing and choked it to death, just like a lion. They have no judgment. When it comes to this, there's no judgment. Pick whatever power attracts you. That's your power greater than yourself. And whenever you see the word God, that's what that means. I've changed my view of God. I can't even count how many times. It doesn't matter who you worship. It doesn't matter. You don't have to worship something. It doesn't matter what you believe in. It just matters that it's not you. Now, from a practical perspective, this is my opinion. I don't speak for anybody but myself. My opinion is that we have evolved to think shamanically. We have evolved to believe in something, whether it's the ancestors. If you go back far enough in time, the first religion was the religion of the ancestors, which is just simply you can't let go of the idea that your father and grandfather, even though they're physically dead, you can't let go of the idea that their consciousness isn't out there somewhere helping you. That was the first religion. And it is my belief that human beings evolved to have this because it helped them interface with their life in all kinds of ways we can't even understand. So I'm not telling you that there's a God and you need to be religious and be spiritual. I'm telling you that your brain is wired that way. You just have to find the one that works for you. In the Western world, you have one choice that's changing, but that's, pretty much the case. You have one choice that's either God or nothing. And that's a very bad system. It's like, if you're going to go buy a car, you have a choice. If you're going to go to a smorgasbord, you have a choice. You can choose what you want. And in the Western world, you don't have that choice. But if you go to India, for example, and you talk to your average Hindu, you got all kinds of choices. If you go to them and you say, yeah, I do not like that Krishna guy at all. He doesn't work for me. Nobody's going to string you up and peel your skin off. They're going to go, okay. Who do you worship? Oh, you worship that elephant-headed guy. Oh, you worship that other guy. Oh, you don't worship any of them. You worship the Brahman. You worship the essence within everything. They don't care. Nobody cares. There's no judgment. You can worship whatever the hell you want, as long as it's not you. Okay? So that's number 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Remember, this is practical. Religion is not practical. This is practical. This isn't. It doesn't say, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to become enlightened, to be saved from hell, to go to heaven. It doesn't say anything about that. It just says just to have some sanity so that you can manage your own life. That's it. That's the whole point. There's nothing beyond that. You can't get anything more spiritual than just being able to manage your own internal and external reality and just be happy in life. That's it. That's all these 12 steps are about. There's nothing religious about it. Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Now, you've come to the conclusion, if it's me, I've now turned my will and my life over to the care of the power of electromagnetism. That's God as I understand God. That is a power greater than myself. No matter how hard I try, I can't force my body to go to the center of the earth, which is the center of the earth is doing absolutely everything in its power to pull me to the center of the earth. The electromagnetic force is so much stronger than the force of gravity that no matter how hard I try, I'm not touching the floor. I can't seem to get my body to pass through this chair. That's the power of electromagnetism. So it's already more powerful than I am. I might as well just use that. If that's what's going to help my brain rewire itself, that's what I'm going to use. So it's a decision. A lot of people get stuck on step 3 in different programs and they say, I haven't figured out my concept of God. It doesn't say here, when you've figured out your concept of God, then turn your will and your life over to that. It doesn't say that. It says, made a decision. That's all you do. You make a decision. You realize you're powerless, you're bonkers, and then you make a decision. You go, you know what? I'm going to stop trying to control this. I'm going to turn it over to something other than me. That's it. Now you've done step 3. You don't have to figure out what your concept of God is. You don't have to go through all of that intellectual masturbation. I hear it all the time. I've been hearing it for almost 40 years. I'm still working on my concept of God, so I haven't done step 3 yet. Get over yourself. Just make a decision that it ain't you. Now you've done step 3. You can do the 3rd step prayer. I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you want. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties so that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of your power, your love, and your way of life. Now, I just said that to electromagnetism. I didn't say, convert the world to Jesus. I just simply, find we could break down the 3rd step prayer and I could tell you why that rewires the brain in a certain way, but I'm not going to do that. Just make the decision that I'm going to turn my will and my life over to something that's not me. Now, because we're intellectual beings, you have to intellectually, address whatever it is, the ocean or the sky or electromagnetism, and say, I can't control my life. Can you please take over control of my life? It's a scary thing. But I've never seen anybody do it and anything bad happen. Everybody who's done it, their life has gotten better. It's practical. Does it mean that electromagnetism is listening to me? No. It means that my brain, at the very least, maybe it does mean that, but it doesn't prove that. But what it does mean is that at the very least, my brain lets go of whatever it's obsessed about and starts to work differently. I start to think differently and I start to take different actions simply because I turned my will over to the power of electromagnetism. We're built that way. We're wired to do this. Rituals, shamanic rituals, actually work really well to access the unconscious mind. So all you're doing here is you're giving yourself a method to access your unconscious mind so you can reprogram yourself so that you can be happy. That's all this is about. Okay, number 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, I guarantee you don't know what that means. You think that means to sit around and to judge yourself, and people have done this. There was a movie again in the 80s about an AA, which goes against all of the traditions of AA. But there was a movie, I think it was called Clean and Sober. And the guy wrote on a napkin, I stole from my mother, I did this, and that was supposed to be an inventory. I mean, that's not an inventory. An inventory is your resentments. So I'm not going to go through it, but you can go online and you can type in inventory worksheet. And what you'll see is you will see 4 columns. And what you're supposed to do is in the first column, you write down who you're resentful at. Now, if you've been with a borderline, your first resentment is whoever it was, Jane or John, whoever your borderline is, that's your first. And in column 1, you write down, I'm angry at John. In column 2, it says why. I mean, you're going to have so many resentments, but start with 1. They split on me after they told me they were going to marry me. That's why. In the third column, you write what it affects. And if you look at different literature, you'll have a list of things you can choose from, which have to do with character defects. What it affects. It affects my finances. It affects my sex life. It affects my reputation. You'll write down all of these things that have to do with your healthy narcissism that's now gone haywire. So you write down it affects my bank account because I spent $4,000 buying her a computer. It affects my sex life because now she's using sex as a weapon and that's how I feel loved. It's affecting my relationships because she's smearing my name to my family, and now it's affecting my finances because she went to my job and got my boss involved. So she's affected. That's why you're angry with her. So you're angry at Jane because she split on you, and here are the reasons it affects my finances, my reputation, my pride, my sex life. You write down all the things that it affects. And then the fourth column is you write down what is your part. This is where the healing comes in. Because again, the brilliant assumption that is being given that the 12 steps don't shove in your face, which is what I'm doing. The fourth column says you're resentful because you took actions and made choices to put yourself in the position to be upset. It's your fault you're angry. You did it to yourself. So you write down what is your part. Well, I know one thing is your part. You're mad at Jane because she split on you and it affects you all these different ways. What is your part? You chose to keep dating somebody that kept showing you that they weren't capable of loving you. You kept chasing after somebody that kept showing you that they were going to hurt you. That's your side of it. So that's step 4. Step 4 is not an inventory of all what you did. I mean, I did that. First time I wrote this big novel and I read it to my sponsor and he goes, that's really great, but that's not an inventory. Inventory is about your resentments, and he spelled it out for me. And I have to tell you, before we go any further, that 4th step saved my life. I kid you not. I would have either committed suicide or committed some other horrible, violent act if I hadn't done that 4th step. It absolutely, completely shifted everything for me. So these first 3 steps are setting you up to do that inventory. Admitted you're powerless over others, your life had become unmanageable, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of the electromagnetic forces. We understand the electromagnetic force. That's setting you up to then be able to do the 4th step. Because if you do the 4th step, you will need some power greater than you to be able to tolerate the horrific, for me anyway, the horrific humiliation of it all. Because it was, for me, for some people, the 4th step is very liberating. For me, it was humiliating. It continues to be humiliating. It's freeing after the fact. After the fact, I feel lighter and better and happier. But when I'm going through it, I can't stand it. It's so hard on my grandiosity. It's very hard. I don't like it at all. So people get to step 3, often I hear this, and they say, yeah, I'm going to stay on step 3 for a year before I get on to step 4 because I don't want to get it. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. I mean, you can work the steps however you want. I could care less. I'm telling you my experience. The way that you prove that you have made a decision to turn your will and your life over to something greater than you is you do the 4th step. You need that power, or at least the illusion of that power, to be able to do the self-searching necessary, to be able to heal. So the first 3 steps you can do instantly. You don't have to spend a year doing it. I know a lot of people do, but you don't have to do it. These guys who made this up, the Bill and Bob and those alcoholics, they would do the 12 steps in a weekend because they knew if they didn't, they could end up dead or in a loony bin. So they went through them as fast as possible. You didn't do it perfect the first time, no problem. You can do it again later. In fact, you keep doing them over and over again. That's what the 10th and 11th step is. You're just doing the 12 steps over and over again. So don't worry about getting it perfect. It's not like you do it once and you're done. Somebody wrote on here a while back, I did the steps a while ago and I'm peaceful now. And I said, then if that's the case, then then you're never done. There's no graduation date. This is a lifelong process that you do one day at a time. So you do the first 3 steps. After you've made the decision to turn your will and your life over to whatever power is not you, you then prove that by immediately doing step 4. You cannot do step 4 by yourself. You're going to need a sponsor. You're going to need a sponsor to sit down with you and do what I did just now. I gave you an example of how to do one line of one piece of the inventory. You're going to have somebody walk you through it. You won't be able to do it yourself. Don't even bother trying. And then step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. When you read that the first time, it sounds like you're going to have to tell people, I stole from my mom, I beat up the kid next door when I was 7, whatever. I had sex in church with, the pastor's daughter. I mean, that's what you think. That's not what that means. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. What it means is you have this list of all of these resentments. I'm mad at Jane because she split on me. It affects my finances, my sex life, my pride, my ego. My part is that I continued to chase after her even though she split on me 5 times before. It's my fault that I got hurt again this time. And then step number 2, I'm mad at Uncle so-and-so. I'm mad at Mom, I'm mad at Dad, I'm mad at God, I'm mad at Trump, I'm mad at Biden, I'm mad at Speaker Pelosi. It doesn't matter. You can be angry at whoever you want with no judgment. Anybody that you have a resentment towards, you write every single one down. Every single resentment you can think of. Don't worry about doing it perfectly because you'll remember some more later and you can go back and do it again. We call that a 10th step. So you prove that you've done step 3 by immediately doing step 4. Step 5 is you simply read what you've written. That's it. It's not a confession of you stole $1 million from the mafia and now they're going to find you. Your sponsor doesn't have to know any of that. That's not a moral inventory. It sounds like it. This is unfortunate that it's in this word, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, admitted to others the exact nature of our wrongs. It sounds like you're confessing to all of the bad things you've done, and you don't have to confess anything. That's not an inventory. You're simply looking at your resentments. The confessing the exact nature of your wrongs is in that 4th column where you're confessing. I see now that my part in it was that I'm chasing after somebody that isn't available to me. I realize now I'm mad at that person because what I really wanted to do, now that I look at it, is I wanted to manipulate them. I realize now I'm mad at that girl in high school because I wanted to take her home and have sex with her and she said no. And it wasn't, I didn't have the right to, demand somebody give me sex, and that's my fault. That's the confession. So hopefully that will take away, when people read those 4 and 5, they're like, oh my God, I'm not doing this shit. Get me the hell out of here. It's not what it is. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. The defects of character are what you've already talked about. You keep chasing after somebody that doesn't love you the way you want. You've come to realize that you're controlling and trying to force them to love you according to your understanding. You realize that you are really selfish because you tried to get that girl in high school to have sex with you, and that you didn't have the right to do that. You've got some serious selfish things when it comes to that. These are the things that these are now your character defects. Why do you think I'm so harsh? Why do you think I have whole videos talking about how codependents are narcissists? Because I've done this with myself. I've gone through this process, and I'm only saying to you what is true for me. I'll do a 5th step with you right now. I've done it before, I'll do it again. What I wanted from my borderline ex was I wanted her to give me the perfect love that my mother never gave me, and that my fiance, who had passed away 2 years before, almost perfectly gave me. I wanted that from her. She love bombed me, and I transferred and projected onto her all of that perfection that she couldn't possibly have lived up to, even if she wasn't borderline. There's no way she could have lived up to what I desperately wanted. And if you are filled and racked with pain to such a degree that you keep chasing after borderlines who reject you, you are the same. It means that you are selfish, controlling, and narcissistic. It sounds really judgmental. You go, you don't understand. How can you talk to me like that? I'm not the narcissist. I'm the victim. Sounds just like the borderlines, right? Borderlines say the same thing. You don't understand. I went through all kinds of hell. I'm not evil. I'm not psychopathic. Completely clueless of the horrific sociopathic, pathological, narcissistic damage they do to you. They're completely clueless of it. Why? Because just like you, they can only see their own pain. They don't see their selfishness. You don't see your selfishness. If you are with a borderline, you've been with a borderline, you're racked with pain, you're filled with anger, I promise you, you are grandiose, selfish, manipulative to the nth degree. You just don't know it yet. When you do this, you will then be able to say that about yourself and not have any shame about it. I have no shame about it. I don't judge myself at all. It makes perfect sense based on what I lived through as a kid. It makes perfect sense. Of course I would be that way. That's why I have no problems with borderlines. Of course they do that. Why wouldn't they? Based on what they lived through? How else are they going to survive? Of course they do that. I don't judge them for what they do. I use words like pathological and sociopathic because it's true. In those moments when they are desperately trying to fix what they feel is killing them, and they're inaccurate and mistaken and deluded and all of that about what's really happening, they're desperately trying to protect themselves from what seems like imminent death to them. It's not their fault. It's not my fault, but it's not their fault. I don't judge them for that. It also doesn't mean that I'm gonna volunteer for it. I'm not gonna be anywhere near it. I don't want anything to do with it. But I sure as hell don't judge them for it. I have zero negative feelings towards my borderline ex. Zero. I have nothing but love and compassion for her. Because what she lived through, and I know a lot of it. I mean, if I were to think about it, I'd break down into tears. What she lived through, horrific. No human being should ever have to live through that. It's amazing she's still alive. I couldn't do it. She's still, as far as I know, she's still alive. So there's no judgment here. That comes from that narcissistic, piece of crap in that book called the Bible. That's not whatever you choose to worship. Okay, so when you do step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. That just means that you've become aware, because that was my experience. My experience was step 4, I got all the anger out, and then I looked at my part, and then I realized, oh my God, I did this. Oh my God, I am so selfish. It was so unfair of me to expect this beautiful, damaged person to fix and fill all the holes in my gut that my mom left cared for. It was unfair of me to expect her to be as perfect and beautiful as my fiance, who's now passed away. I don't know any human being will ever come close to the perfection that she was. But that's not fair of me to put that onto this beautiful, damaged person. That's not her fault. And you hear in my voice, I have, and what she did to me was the worst thing anybody's ever done. It was the most devaluing, hurtful thing anybody's ever done. And I don't have any pain. I'm not making it up. I'm not pretending to be spiritual, and I'm not that kind of a person. Left to myself, I have a short temper. I'm the last person you want to fuck with. I'm the last person you want to sell a car to. Trust me, I'm a giant pain in the ass. I don't float. My farts stink really bad. I'm as human as anybody else. And I have zero anger and pain and resentment. And I also have zero attraction and zero desire for my borderline ex. It's because I did that 4th step. When I get through step 4 and step 5, then I have to sit with the realization that, oh my God, I am such a narcissistic, selfish codependent. And I get to laugh at myself. Then comes step 7. Humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. What are your shortcomings? That I chase after women that can't love me. That's a shortcoming. That I judge people for all kinds of things when I see things in myself that I don't like in them, and I'm unconsciously projecting onto them, and I judge them for it. That I have a short temper, that I have a thin skin. These are all some of my character defects. I asked, since my, in this example, my higher power is the power of electromagnetism. Once again, I'm tricking my brain to work on a different level, even if the electromagnetism doesn't hear me or respond, just by me saying to the power of electromagnetism, please relieve me of these character defects I've just listed. Something in me shifts. My brain shifts. My unconscious. I create a loving relationship with my unconscious, and everybody's unconscious is trying to protect them. Narcissists are simply people whose unconscious mind, it's not simple, but whatever else got them there. What is happening is the dynamic is they have a relationship with their unconscious mind. They have a persecutorial relationship with their unconscious mind. They have, they are fighting with their unconscious mind who's trying to protect them. And their unconscious mind treats them like their narcissistic parents. Doing these steps allows you to change the relationship so that your unconscious mind isn't your persecutor, your judger, your controller, your abuser. You now have an unconscious mind that is doing what it's meant to do. It works with you. It does not judge you. It now learns and it goes, oh, you mean when I force my will onto others, that doesn't protect you? Oh, I get that now. I thought by forcing you to judge yourself harshly, you would be more able to control the other people who would then give you what I was trying to help. I didn't realize that. Oh, no wonder. Your unconscious mind shifts. And then you laugh at yourself, and your unconscious mind laughs with you. You then learn. I tell you guys on this channel, one of the things you should do is you should go around and do something good for somebody every day, and don't let them know that you're doing it. And I don't tell you to do that to be spiritual. I tell you to do that to trick your mind, to change the grooves in how the mind works. Trick your unconscious mind into working towards you. If your unconscious mind came to the realization that, oh, you mean when I do things for other people just for the sake of doing it and I don't want anything in return, that's helpful to me? Then you will find yourself unconsciously being kind to others. Then what ends up happening is people go, yeah, that guy Bob, he's honestly a really nice guy. He's just great to be around. Oh, the other guy, Jim? No, he's a ass kisser. He acts like he's nice all the time and he does everything, but there's always a string attached. Now that used to be you. Bob used to be like that. I remember when Bob was like that. Bob used to do that. And whenever he did something, you knew that there was something coming out of it. He was passive aggressive and controlling and manipulative and snarky and sarcastic. But he said that, all he did was try and help people. But something happened. He went and did this 12-step thing. And now he just really is a nice guy. And he's just great to be around. And I love being around him. This is what the 12 steps will do for you. Your unconscious mind will start to work with you as your friend. It'll start doing its job. Number 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now, that again was Alcoholics Anonymous. Those people, alcoholics, drug addicts, they tend to be very destructive. Do things like steal from people, lie to people, con people. So they're going to have a list of people that they owe money to. They broke that guy's window, they stole that guy's car. They've got a lot of stuff they got to make up for. You're a codependent, that might not be the case for you. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you did in one of your codependent rages, you did some really horrible things. You took revenge on your borderline and I don't know, maybe not. But at the very least, you had expectations on them that were unfair. At the very least, you had that. At the very least, you wanted them to give you the unrealistic, perfect love that even your mother couldn't have done. And that in itself is a wrong that you need to make amends for. Now, how do you make amends for that if you're no contact? You don't call them up and say, I was wrong for asking you to love me, and I know now you couldn't have done that. Obviously, you can't say that. That's only going to cause more pain and destruction. So instead, what you do is you make a vow going forward that in your next relationships, you will seek to find their limitations, and you will seek to respect their boundaries, and you will not ask them to be more than what they're capable of. For me, that means also knowing, is this what I want? Can this person give me what I want? I honestly want somebody who can do this, 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 and this person can't do that. So I'm not going to harm them by choosing to stay with them out of guilt and then unconsciously, passive-aggressively trying to turn them into what I want, which is what a lot of people do. That would be one way of making a list. That was actually into step 9. Step 9 is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So it would be injurious for you to go to your borderline ex and say, I realize you're incapable of loving me because you're mentally handicapped, and so I'm sorry that I asked you to love me. That's going to be damaging, so you don't say that. It's damaging to you because you can't do something that's going to be injurious to them or others, which includes you. So if it's going to be injurious to you, if you owed if you owed the government, X amount of money and you had kids, and a wife that you supported, and by doing that you'd end up going to jail and couldn't support your family, then you might want to hold off on that one. You have to think about it. You have to not make it about yourself. And the reason for this is sometimes people, I did this once. When I was in college and I dated a girl, and I went off to go do some theater in another city for the summer, and I said, listen, we're going to be apart. You do your thing, I'll do mine. We just, whatever. Right? I wanted to be able to date other people, and so I said, you date other people, I'll date. And then when we come back, we'll date again. And of course, when I was away, I met somebody and was making out with her, and then I felt guilty, and I said, I can't, I'm seeing somebody else. And then, like an idiot, I picked up the phone and I called her and I said, you know what, I feel so bad, but I made out with some girl at the rap party, and I had to tell you, I just want to be honest with you. And she says, oh my God, thank you, you're so honest, and thank you, oh, I love you, click. I fall asleep. 10 minutes later, the phone rings, I pick it up, and she's tearing me a new one. I can't fucking believe you did that to me. No, it was my fault. I was the stupid idiot that said, everybody do whatever the hell they want. I ended up feeling bad about it. That's about me. That's not about her. But in order to make myself feel better, I called her and I dumped on her so that I wouldn't have to feel guilty. When the kind thing would have been to, okay, I realize I don't want to date this other person. I still want to be with her, but I'm not going to tell her. It's not going to make her feel good. So you can't make amends for your own need to feel better. You have to make amends because it actually helps the other person, and it helps everybody around you. So that's step 9. You make direct amends to such people wherever possible. It's not going to be possible if you are no contact. You can't make amends to your borderline ex if you've gone no contact, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So number 9, let me go back to that. So there's going to be other people that you've hurt. There are going to be other people that you've been selfish, because if you're codependent, you are grandiose. You're also narcissistic. You're selfish. You're myopic. And you're immature. That's just the nature, because you are regressed at age 4, 5, 6, or 7 when you didn't get what you needed from your parents. So that means you're going to do things to other people, and as you do this, you're going to realize that you're passive aggressive, you're outright aggressive, and you're going to have to go to those people and apologize. And they may not be your borderline ex; they're going to be somebody else. And you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. So that you can clean your unconscious, train your unconscious, and get your brain to work and help you. Right now it's your enemy. You want to turn it into your friend. Number 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That means continue to do 4th steps. Now this is, it's not written anywhere, but that's what I do. Whenever I have a resentment that lasts more than 1 or 2 days, I have to write it. If it's just anger and it passes in a day and I never worry about it again, then it's just normal human anger. If it's a resentment, it means that I'm waking up 3, 4, 5, a week later, 2 weeks later, and I'm practicing in my head what I should have said to that person. I do it all the time. I do it all the time. I will walk around in my house self-righteously practicing what I should have said to my brother 20 years ago. I got to do an inventory. I got to write down the 4 columns. Call my therapist, my sponsor, somebody, and read it to him. Okay, I'm mad at my brother because of this or that or that. That's step 10. At the end of the day, when you're sitting before you go to bed, you think of the day and you ask yourself, was I selfish? Was I passive aggressive? Was I aggressive? Was I manipulative? Was I untrue? Did I bake cookies for people because I wanted them to love me, not because I actually wanted to do something nice for them? You take honest inventory of yourself without any judgment, because you now have a relationship with whatever this is, the power of electromagnetism, and it doesn't judge you. You have your unconscious mind that now wants to be your friend, and it doesn't judge you. So you can look at all of these things and admit them without any fear, without any insecurity, without and if it's not appropriate to admit it to other people, you can admit it to yourself, or you can admit it to other people in CODA or whatever 12-step group you're in. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. Sought through prayer and meditation. Remember, this was written in the 1930s. I'm not a big believer in prayer. Like, oh God, please give me this. Oh God, please give me that. I've got a whole other way of doing things. If that works for you, it'll work. Meditation. I don't care what kind of meditation you do. I like mantra meditation. I don't sit around trying to empty my mind. I can't do that. My mind is far too active. I need something to focus on, so I do mantra. I do physical movement. Surfing for me is a form of meditation. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with whatever that power is, the power of electromagnetism. When I'm out in the water surfing, I think about all that stuff. I think about the negative ions that are being created every time the water crashes in on itself. It creates these negative ions. And I think about the healing power of that, and I breathe that in. That connects me to my understandings of God as I understand it. Whatever the hell works for you. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood them, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. God's will for you is your happiness. You want to boil it down? Your health and your happiness. Praying only for the knowledge of what's going to bring me health and happiness and the power to carry that out. Sometimes you're going to need power to make some difficult choices, some frightening choices. You're going to have to live fearlessly and lovingly and openly. You're going to need power to do that. So this is just one interpretation of it. You can come up with your own. I'm trying to demystify all the religion out of it. That's how I see it. You can see it however you need to see it. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Now, what that means is, you're not going to like this, it means if you're a codependent, and it doesn't matter how religious or how spiritual you are, if you are a codependent and you haven't worked those 12 steps, you have not had a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening is not the sky opening up with light beaming down on you. I mean, you want to do that. There's no shortage of list of drugs you can take which will give you that experience, but that's not a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening, in my definition, this is me talking now, is having all of your thoughts, feelings, impulses, desires, and impulses. Did I say impulses twice? Having all your thoughts, feelings, impulses, and instincts, desires with full consciousness and without any judgment. And no matter how painful it is or how frightening it is, you have the conscious awareness to know what actions to take which will be beneficial to yourself and everybody else. That is the height of spiritual awakening. You cannot become more spiritual than that. Which means, the good news is, you can be completely, totally screwed up. You can be homicidal, suicidal. You can be full of fear, anger, lust, greed. You can have all of these things flying through you. And as long as you have the ability to take conscious actions towards your best interest, which is also the best interest of other people, you are now enlightened. You can't become more enlightened. So if your idea of spiritual awakening is being free of all pain, I'm sorry to tell you that's not what that means. I don't say that you can't have that. Your form of spiritual awakening might be that you're on a cloud farting out orgasms. I don't care. It's not about what you feel or what you don't feel. Your feelings are irrelevant to your spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening simply means I'm aware of everything. I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of my agendas. I'm aware of my fears. I'm aware of my reactions to you. I'm aware and I feel it all, and I know what I'm supposed to do. You don't know what to do, you pick up the phone and you call your sponsor. There's a 16-year-old girl, and she tells me that it's okay if we sleep together. She won't call the cops. Is it okay? I mean, I feel I want to do it. She said, no, I can't. It's against the law. I might go to jail. Oh, and she's not psychologically capable of having sex with a 57-year-old man. I shouldn't do it. Okay, I won't do it. I don't judge myself. I'm not saying that happened. But if it did, as long as I don't take any destructive action, I'm good. So I say to her, I'm sorry, that won't work. Here's $5. Call your parents. Remember when you had to have money to make a phone call? It gives you an idea of how old I am. No, they don't need that. Whatever. You know what I mean? You do what people need, what's best for them, regardless of what you want. And you know selfishly by doing that, you are empowering yourself. You didn't know that before you worked the 12 steps because you felt that everything was against you and everybody was stealing from you, and you had to steal it. You had to steal love from people. You had to manipulate it out of them. You had to control them, squeeze it out of them, guilt it out of them. You had to overpower them with your love so that they fell to their knees weeping. I love you so much. I was borderline until you loved me. And now you get to go, oh, you're a borderline? I wish you all the best in the world. There's nothing I want more than to have a weekend of passionate lovemaking with a totally crazy, sex-crazed borderline. But that would be really bad for me, and it would be harmful to you. It would be selfish of me to do that, so I'm going to go no contact. And it's because I love you and I care about you. Now you're in enlightenment. Okay? So that's my take on the 12 steps. My personal take. I do not represent any 12-step group, nor do I represent anything other than my own experience. But hopefully now you can see them for what they are. They're not what you thought. All right, let's see what else. There might be some questions. I'm happy to take them. Dora asked a question about 2.5 hours ago, however long I've been on, and asked, how can I cope with trust issues? Work the 12 steps. I believe I'm trustworthy. So that doesn't mean you are. You might not be. You don't know what you don't know yet. Thinking other humans also are. I have no prejudice towards people, but in my life I was hurt many times. Thank you for your help. So to answer your question, how can you cope with trust issues? I mean, do you really expect me to give you a one-word answer to that? You got to do the work. I've got 4 things I want you to do. Number 1, go no contact, which means that you block your borderline ex from calling you, emailing you, Skyping you, any other kind of way. You throw your phone away, you move to another city, you get a police order to have them stay away from you. You go no contact. 2, work all of these 12 steps with a sponsor. And then sponsor somebody else. In the 12 steps. Is that right? Or this could be number 2 or number 3, it doesn't matter. Number 3, get a therapist so that you can really delve into your unconscious, and with now in tandem with the 12 steps, you can become conscious of what your unconscious motives are. And then number 4, which is really step 11, daily meditation. How do you cope with trust issues? Those are the 4 simple steps that you need in order to do it. It'll fix everything. Every one of your questions can be answered by those 4 things. Tanisha Lulu, Mike, you're talking about the tribes and yeah, I know who you're talking. Yeah, I know who I'm talking about. Thanks. My BPD now ex kept pushing for distance between us due to her personal issues. That's what her therapist advised. Well, good for her. She turned apathetic. I left days later. She finds my replacement. So are you complaining? You know, there's a movie, I forget the name of the movie. Somebody will tell me. It's in an Italian neighborhood in the 50s in New York. The local mafioso guy is talking to one of the younger kids, and some guy comes walking down the street and he sees him and he goes, oh, hey, I'll get you. I gotta go. And he starts running away, and the younger guy is like, that motherfucker. And the mob boss says, what's going on with him? Oh, he owes me $20. And he says, do you like that guy? He says, no, I can't stand him. He's a fucking jerk. And he goes, so he's running away from you. Yeah, every time I try and get him to pay me, he keeps running away from me. So you don't like him. He's a fucking jerk. All it cost you was $20 to get rid of him. You should be grateful. Your borderline's therapist told your borderline to stop having contact with you. You should thank that person. It was also the best thing for you. How do you know that person wasn't thinking, the best thing for this person is to get this borderline away? How do you not know that? But it's also true for the borderline. The borderline has no business dating you. They're in therapy. They need to get their shit together. You're the last thing that they need. You're their fix. She turned apathetic. I left, and days later she finds my replacement. Means she's torturing and abusing somebody besides you. Why are you complaining to me about that? I think that's, what my sponsor once said, is that rejection is God's protection. Good. You got what you needed. Now pull your big boy pants up, deal with it, or your big girl pants up. Be grateful. All right, that's it. I got nothing else, no other questions. I really wanted to just talk about the 12 steps. Dora threw down, I don't know what that is. Is that 10 Canadian dollars? Thank you. I appreciate that. That's it for me today. And yeah, I will talk to you guys when I talk to you. So take care, stay safe. Don't take yourself too seriously. And we'll get through this, whatever the hell it is. All right, talk to you guys later.